Hello, good morning, everyone. I am Medjay Depana, and I'm going to discuss the West African civilizations. I have here the three empire, which belongs to the West African civilization, namely first the Empire of Ghana, the Empire of Mali, and the Empire of Songhai. Later on, as we go through to this presentation, we will talk or discuss what are these empires. And starting off with the Empire of Ghana. So, the Empire of Ghana started with the 200 AD, and it has trade across the Sahara had existed for centuries, and they use us as camel as transportation for their trades, and the trade routes cross the savannah through the region farmed by Sununki people, and the Sununki people called the ruler Ghana or the War of Chief, and by the 700s, Ghana was a kingdom and its rulers were growing rich by taxing the goods that traders carried through their territory. So before they use camel as a transportation, uh, they have used the most pack animals, namely the oxen, the donkeys, and the horses, but they could not travel very far in the hot, dry Sahara without rest or water. And then during the 3rd century, the Berber or the nomads began using camels. So the camel could plod steadily over much longer distances, covering as much as 60 miles in a day. So imagine how camel can survive in a desert in the Sahara in which they carried water in case during their transportation or the routes, they might not get weak too fast because they stored water in their bombs. So the people in the empire, they were called the Sininki people, and uh, Ghana. It was a war of chief and the ruler of the empire of Ghana. And we have here the gold sold trade. This is a gold from a forest region south of the savannah between the Niger and the Senegal rivers. And Arab and Berber traders crossed the desert with the camel caravans loaded down with salt. So during this empire, the gold and the salt is one of the most important trade items. Um, from the forest region, they trade salt in the Senegal River, in which in rivers they uh, in which the salt from the Senegal rivers they trade salt for gold from the forests of the south of the savannah. So from the word trade, so those miners has a lot of salt. What they did is they trade from gold to salt, in which since in that certain area they lack of salt, so they exchanged their gold to convert into gold. Since the West Africa's savanna and forest lack of salt, so a material essential to human life. The Sahara contained deposits of salt. So, where in fact, the Saharan village of Teghaza workers built their houses from salt blocks because it is the only material available. So, since um, the Sahara has its main resources is salt, so mostly their houses were built of salt. It's because it's the only available resources that they can use to build a house in order to protect their family and themselves. So, meanwhile, African traders brought gold north from the forest regions, and merchants met in trading cities where they exchanged goods under the watchful eye of the king's tax collector. So, in addition to taxing trade, royal officials made sure that all traders goods fairly and did business according to law. So the royal guards also provided protection from the bandits. Next is the land of gold. So Ghana's king controlled trade and commanded a large army. So the king stored gold nuggets and slabs of salt. And Ghana's African ruler acted as a religious leader, chief judge, and military commander. The king of Ghana, since the king of Ghana controlled trade and commanded a large army, so he demanded also taxes and gifts from the chiefs of surrounding lands. So that's why the Empire of Ghana is known as one of the richest empire in the West Africa. And as long as the chiefs made the payments, the king left them in peace to rule their own people. So during his royal palace, the king stored gold nuggets and slab of salt, in which it serves or collected as taxes, and only the king had the right to own gold nuggets, although gold dust freely circulated in the marketplace. So, by this means, the king limited the supply of gold and kept its price from falling. So, Ghana's African ruler acted as a religious leader, a chief judge, and military commander, and he headed a large bureaucracy and could call up a huge army. So, during the 1067, a Muslim geographer and scholar named Bal Bakri wrote a description of Ghana's royal court, saying, "The king adorns himself, wearing necklaces and bracelets, and the court of appeal is held in Dome Pavilion, around which stand 10 horses with gold embroidered trappings. Behind the king stand 10 pages holding shields and swords decorated with gold, and on his right are the sons of the subordinate or the lower kings of his country, and they were all wearing splendid garments with their hair mixed with gold." So it was al-Bakri who quoted in the Africa in the days of exploration. So that's how he portrayed or described the Empire of Ghana, um, being one of the richest empire during the West African civilizations. Next is the Islamic influences. So Islam spread through trade and um, the Muslim merchants and teachers settled in the states south of the Sahara and introduced their faith in there. So Ghana's rulers converted to Islam. So eventually, since Ghana's rulers converted to Islam by the end of the 11th century, Muslim advisors were helping the king run his kingdom. So while Ghana African rulers accepted Islam, so many people during this time in the empire clung to their animistic beliefs and practices. So animism meaning it is a belief that spirits living in animals, plants, and natural forces play an important role in daily life. So um, they don't believe in God, but they do believe that in certain things like the plants, animals, or even the natural forces uh, plays an important role in the daily life, and also Islam's growth encouraged the spread of literacy. Moving on to the next empire, the Empire of Mali. So by the 100, for the 1235 rather, the King of Mali had emerged. So its founders were Mande speaking people. So they live in the south of Ghana, and Mali's wealth, like Ghana's, was built on gold, and as Ghana remained weak, people who had been under its control began to act independently. So, in addition, miners found new gold deposits farther east, and this caused the most important trade routes to shift eastward, which made a new group of people, the people of Mali. So, It was the same as the Ghana. So they were wealthy as they were the providers or the traders of gold, in which it also enabled them to seize power, since their resources relies on gold. Here, the Sundiata conquers an empire. So Mali's first great leader is Sundiata. Right here, you can see here this is Sundiata. So Sundiata, um, he was the first great leader which came to power by crushing a cruel and popular leader. So Sandiata became Mali's Mansa or emperor. So during this time, he was the emperor, and he took over Kingdom of Ghana and the trading cities of Kombi and Walata. So he proved to be as a great leader in peace as he had been in war. So also he promoted agriculture and reestablished the gold salt trade, and he and people began to call Sundiata's Empire of Mali, meaning where the king lives. But unfortunately, during the 1255, Sundiata died. Moving on to the Mansa Musa expands Mali. So rulers built mosques, attending public prayers, and supported the preaching of Muslim holy men, and Mansa ruled from about 1312 to 1332. And it was the between the reigns of Sandhiyata and the Mansa Musa Mali experienced turmoil, and under the Mansa Musa, the empire expanded to roughly twice the size of the Empire Ghana. Next is the travels of Ibn Battuta. So, in the hundred, in the 1352, one of the Mansa Musa successors prepared to receive a traveler, and his historian named Ibn Battuta. So he was a native Tangier in North Africa and had traveled for 27 years, visiting most of the countries in the Islamic world. So after leaving the royal palace, Ibn Battuta visited Timbuktu and other cities in Mali, and he found that he could travel without the fear of crime. So, as a devout Muslim, he praised the people for their study of Quran. However, he also criticized them for not strictly practicing the Islam's moral code. Moving on to the next empire, the Empire of Songhai. So, as Mali declined in the 140s, people who had been under its control began to break away. So, among there were the Songhai. So, there were the people of the east, and they built up an army and extended their territory to the large bend in the Niger River near the Gao. So, they gained control of all the important trade routes, and Gao was the capital of their empire. Next is the Sunni Ali, a conquering hero. So the Songhai had two extraordinary heroes or rulers, brothers, and both of them were Muslims. And one is the Sunni Ali. So um, in which he built a vast empire by military conquest, in which also his rule began in 1464, and it lasts for 30 years. So Sunni Ali also built a professional army that had a riverboat fleet of war canoes and a mobile fighting force on horseback. So he expanded Songhai into an empire through his skill as a military commander and his aggressive leadership. So, in fact, during the 1468, Sunni Ali achieved his first a major military triumph. So he captured the city of Timbuktu, which had been important part of the Malis Empire. But 5 years later, he took Dijani, also a trade city that had a university. So to take Dijani, Sunni Ali surrounded the city with his army for 7 years before it fell in 1473. Moving on to the Askiya Muhammad governs well. So after the Sunni Ali's death in 1400, his son succeeded him as a ruler. So Askiya Muhammad was the son of Sunni Ali, so he took over as a ruler. So almost at once, the son faced a major revolt by Muslims who were angry that he did not practice their religion faithfully, and the leader of the revolt was a devout Muslim named Askia Muhammad. He drove Sunni Ali's sons from power and replaced him. So during his 37-year rule, so Askia Muhammad proved to be an excellent administrator in which he set up an efficient tax system and chose able officials. And he drove Sunni Ali son from power and proved to be an excellent administrator. And where in fact he set up an efficient tax system and chose able officials. But unfortunately, the collapse of the Songhai Empire ended a 1,000 year period in which powerful kingdoms and empires ruled the central region of the West Africa. So other than that, with the empire of the West African civilization, we have here the other people in the West Africa. Let's start with the Hausa city states compete. So the Hausa were a group of people named after the language they spoke. So they spoke the language Hausa. So they first emerged between the 1000 and 1200 in the Savannah area east of Mali and Songhai in what is today we call the northern Nigeria. And in such city-states as Kano, Katsina, and Zazazu, uh, Zazao rather later called Zaria, and they were the local rulers built walled cities for their capitals, and Hausa rulers governed the farming villages outside the city walls, and they profited greatly from supplying the needs of caravans, and all Hausa city-states had similar forms of government. And the rulers held a great power over their subjects, but ministers and other officials acted to check this power. So for protection, each city-state raised an army of a mounted horsemen, although our rulers often schemed and fought to gain control over their neighbors, and none succeeded for long. So the constant fighting among the city-states prevented any one of them from building a Hausa empire. Next is the Yoruba kings and artists. So the Yoruba speaking people belong to a number of small city-states in forests on the southern edge of the savannah in what is today Benin and southwestern Nigeria. So mostly, the people here was mostly the type of labor or livelihood is based on farming, and some of these smaller communities join together under the strong leader. So the Yoruba kings serve as the most important religious and political leaders in their kingdoms, in which Ife and Oyo were the two largest Yoruba kingdoms, and the Ife were gifted artists who carve in wood and ivory. And lastly, the kingdom of Benin. So the people of Benin made their homes in the forest, and the first kings of Benin date from 1200s, and during the 1400s, the Oba named Iwari made Benin into a major West African state. So Iwari also strengthened Benin City by building walls around it, and Benin artists learned their craft from an Ife artist brought to Benin. So we have here the product of the Benin called the Benin bronzes, in which they were called for the famous for its bronze and basque sculptures. So people um, in this empire was very productive and artistic, in which um, they um, they made their art by sculpting to bronze, and sculpture was made by guilds controlled by the king, and it was the main function of the Benin art was to please the ruler by recording his history or by displaying his power. So we have here one of the products of the Benin bronzes rather. We have here the Queen Mother. So it is a body known for a type of Benin sculpture. It was the royal head. So such as this one here, you can see here the picture of the Queen Mother. And so in Benin, the Queen Mother held a lot of power to symbolize that power. She wore a woven crown called chicken's beak. So here is the plaque. So plaque such as decorated the palace of the Oba, ruler of Benin. And lastly, here is the leopard. So it was admired for its power, the fierceness, and intelligence, which the leopard they depicted as on many royal objects. And this snarling leopard is a symbol of king's power, and it is also a water vessel that was used on the ceremonial occasions. So this ends my part for the West African civilizations. Thank you for listening and have a great day.